Good evening. My name's James Danger. This is another one of my series in breaking news stories, which are excerpts from my direct news feed coming from Google on issues to do with IVF that may be of relevance both to clinic and their clinic clients, people undergoing IVF treatment. This is my posting number 5, and it's basically started in November, but it's actually gone through to almost beginning of December. The first one is something, and that coming from a website called Live Action, and it talks about research confirming the dangers of egg donation for both recipients and donors. As the fertility industry continues its search for more egg donors, research is confirming that the practice carries serious risks, not just for the donors, but also for the women who carry children created using another woman's eggs. So the key takeaway. As the fertility industry continues to grow with more and more couples pursuing IVF and surrogacy, demands have increased for egg donors. The eggs are often donated anonymously, depriving donor-conceived children of the knowledge of their family history, family health history, background, and heritage. A researcher specializing in LGBT health has criticized the use of donor eggs as women who donate them and the women who carry them are already told of the risks. And the risks are not only of the children trying to follow their traceability, but for donors, there's a risk of hyperstimulation. And for the women receiving the donated eggs, there is some data to suggest that there is some premature delivery for those people. And this is not medical advice, but if you're interested in this, you need to discuss this with your doctor. The second one is something which is, I'm not all that happy with. This came from Live Action, which is a pro-life group. And they basically said that as Health and Human Services Secretary Robert J. Kennedy attempted to portray cheaper IVF access as doing God's work, pro-life groups, including Live Action, have criticised the move. And then they make the claim that while pioneers of IVF, medical researcher Robert Edwards and obstetrician gynecologist Patrick Steptoe claimed the motivation behind their research was to help women and couples struggling with infertility. Their research legacy is dark and full of documented unethical practices with direct ties to eugenic and the abortion movement. And as my belief, I think this is categorically wrong and is disinformation. I know Rob Edwards very well. I've met Patrick Steptoe quite a few times at meetings, and I think this statement is absolutely untrue. And so I think the pro-life movement is trying to slur these people, and I think it's wrong. The next one is a story about polygenetic risk scoring. This probably shouldn't be, and this one should be in my new alerts. The publication has just been sent to MedXRV, looking at the validation of 9 polygenic risk scores. So polygenic risk scores can reduce lifetime disease risk by guiding embryo selection during IVF. Polygenic risk scores is where they measure your DNA and then they give you a likelihood of you having any of the conditions which have been developed against huge databases of millions of individuals. In this case, they performed genome-wide association meta-analysis totaling 1.5 million people to construct a state-of-the-art polygenic risk scoring process for 9 diseases, including Alzheimer's, breast cancer, coronary artery disease, endometriosis, hypertension, prostate cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, types 1 and type 2 diabetes. 3 of them, including Alzheimer's, prostate, and type 2 diabetes, explain over 75% of the common heritability that they can test for. And the within-family validation of 40,000 siblings across 18,000 families showed that for 8 of 9 diseases, the predictive performance of their system was comparable, confirming substantial direct genetic effects. Basically saying that they believe their polygenic risk scoring has a reasonable degree of accuracy. The modelling of embryo selection suggests that couples of European ancestry with 5 euploid embryos, that's where they have correct numbers of chromosomes, could achieve between 27 and 6% relative risk reduction across diseases. The validation in the All for Us biobank demonstrated that these polygenic risk scores maintain significant statistical power even in non-European groups. And they make the claim that these findings support the clinical applicability of PRS-guided embryo selection to reduce the burden of common diseases. Sounds wonderful. However, my comment is that these are very powerful predictions of disease reduction that men will find very hard to resist. And that's a generic man, not males. If you are coming through IVF and you have a history in your family of breast cancer or coronary disease, etc., and clinicians offer you the chance of having pre-implantation genetic testing, both for euploidy and then using that DNA to also test for polygenetic risk scores. It's a very attractive thing, but it has considerable risks, and I recommend you look at my video on polygenetic risk scores. My expectation is that in the coming years there will be a trickle and then a flood of requests for PGT-A services, both from infertile clients having IVF and fertile clients wanting to have a healthier baby. And it's going to become, in 10 to 20 years, excuse me, I think more fertile women will be having IVF than infertile people. This is just huge. Governments may well start to support PGT for some genetic conditions that cost a lot of adult health costs. And so don't be surprised if a government says, well, for this bit safe for Alzheimer's, we spend, say 1% of GDP on looking after people with Alzheimer's. But if you want to have IVF and have an embryo selected that has a low risk for Alzheimer's, we'll pay the costs. It suddenly becomes very attractive. Okay, the next one's missing the fine print of IVF. And this is from WNG.org. It's just a website as far as I'm concerned. However, it gets into the news feed. It gets into people's memory. So in healthcare, informed consent is a famous cornerstone of medical ethics. Yet in today's landscape of legal abortions or so-called gender-affirming care, patients are often denied this very information on the principles that the principle requires. When it comes to IVF, the pattern is the same. Clinics often gloss over the fact that the process can produce far more embryos than a family will ever use, treating it as a technical detail instead of a moral crisis. So families often assume to know that IVF is designed to create many more embryos, as many embryos as possible. In reality, most are blindsided when they find themselves in so-called extras. To raise the issue directly would mean acknowledging the uncomfortable truth. IVF creates human lives only to leave them frozen, unused, or destroyed, but truth is not good for business. And once again, I believe this information is disingenuous. Everyone that comes through IVF understands the concept of hyperstimulation is to make as many embryos as you can and to put back all the healthy ones one after the other until you've had your first child. And then if you want to, you can have the remaining embryos for a subsequent family. And so I think this is not true. We actually are creating embryos as many as we can, but we're not hiding it from couples. In fact, that's front and center. And another one on fertility tourism, which I thought was interesting, CBS News. This is late October, so I'm only a month behind in my news. The global fertility tourism market has grown by more than 50 million in the past year and is projected to reach at least 800 million by 2030. So with limited insurance coverage, a Florida couple started researching what's known as fertility tourism, where patients travel abroad for more affordable care. And of course, in this article, they take one case, and in this case is Ricardo, who originally came from Colombia, found a clinic there in Bogota, offering a dramatic price difference, a package of 4 IVF rounds for $11,000 compared to $60,000 in the US. Medication costs were less than half. So it's no brainer. Because I'm from here, says Escobar, we found the clinic had good ratings and excellent results. The point is that IVF in a lot of Western countries, particularly in America, is just obscene. The cost of having IVF, $60,000 for 4 rounds. In fact, I understand many clinics will charge that just for 1 round because there's so much extra work being done in IVF cycles now with going to blastocyst, ICSI, the pre-implantation genetic diagnosis of vitrification. The cost is enormous, far making it almost impossible for many people to have IVF. And the last one is something which is in the news. beginning of November. That is where these researchers have identified they've transformed some human skin cells into 82 eggs that were fertilized with sperm in a lab, resulting in 7 early stage embryos, which could offer a potential future pathway to parenthood for people who've been unable to conceive naturally. This early stage technique reprograms original skin cells into a flexible state, allowing them to develop into any number of cell types, including egg cells. It could bypass fundamental reproductive bacteria for allowing them to creation of embryos without the need for conventional eggs or sperm or invasive fertility treatment. And this is the basis of a lot of animal work. And this is really early stages for humans. These embryos did not go on to develop. And I think it's going to be years before any of that happens. But once again, 10, 15 years, you could see big breakthroughs in this. Just that there's a lot of news about producing embryos from skin cells, but I think it's actually disingenuous to suggest it's around the corner. So that's my little lot of news for the week. My name's James Stanger. I'm an embryologist with more than 50 years experience. I'm not a medical person, but this information is not medical advice. But hopefully it may help you knowing what questions to ask about your treatment with your doctor, and maybe to help in understanding the advice you receive. If you like it, what I'm doing, press subscribe and tell everyone that's worthwhile looking. Leave a comment and press like. And I think basically I just need to recognise Ferdays, my other company, which provides online EQA services for IVF clinics for training in IVF and andrology and embryology. And if your clinic partakes in such a EQA scheme, then it's to your benefit because you know the laboratory staff are under constant assessment and review. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you for your time and patience. I know IVF is a personal journey that involves the action of many ideas, techniques, and staff. It helps to understand all aspects of that journey, and I hope this information may be of value. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time.